You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hey, all you music lovers and all you Saturday Night Live fans out there, welcome to Modern Musicology. I am author, publisher, and percussionist R. Alan Seiler, and with me tonight is no one. All three of my co-hosts have abandoned me. I am all alone, and that's okay. Anthony is off in the land of his birth visiting family, and can't argue with that. Stephanie has got her own family commitments, and Rob is off at a show tonight. So, it's just me. And, that's all right. But I was thinking, what can I do just by myself? So what I came up with is that, I've been a SNL fan since the 70s, literally since the 70s. And I watch every single week without fail. Every year, for at least the last 5 or 6 years after the SNL season finale, I do a countdown of my top 10 performances of the season. Usually, I just do this on my Facebook page. But last year, I included my top 10 list for that year in one of the Modern Musicology episodes. Before we get into our SNL discussion, though, I need to get caught up on some listener feedback because I missed some last show that we did. So let me just get some of this in. The first one I have is from Danny Siegel, who commented about our interview with Olivia Serafini-Sali talking about her new film, Endless Calls for Fame. Said the episode was very cool. He heard it and definitely is interested in seeing the film. I highly recommend that film to you, Danny, and anyone else who hasn't seen it yet. Endless Calls for Fame, the story of the new rising suns. Definitely go check that film out. It is fantastic. And then on our last episode, talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees for this year, Drew Walco says, good call making a connection between the Chubby Checker nomination and Questlove, but there's an especially compelling reason there, the Philly connection. Chubby's profile has always stayed prominent in the Philadelphia area, probably more so than in the rest of the country. That's a very good point, Drew. Thanks so much for leaving that comment and making that point. That's great. And then Raleigh Araneta says, I've lost interest in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a joke. There are so many more deserving artists that should have been there long before those already inducted. I'm not talking about different genres that nominees belong to, as rock and roll has become an all-encompassing term for music. The fact that Lenny Waronker just now getting in is the biggest joke of them all. There are music execs already in who have done far less. Waronker, as head of A&R and later as president of Warner Brothers Records with his boss Mo Ostin, turned a fledgling label into a dominant record company for a couple of decades while they helmed it. Prince, Madonna, Van Halen, Rod Stewart are just a few acts who reached superstardom under their watch. They also had the patience to keep and nourish artists like Van Morrison, Bonnie Raitt, Grateful Dead, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Talking Heads, R.E.M., James Taylor on the label for years before their albums sold in significant numbers. Fleetwood Mac is the biggest example of having their patience pay off. That's a great observation, Raleigh. Thank you so much for writing in. And for anybody else who's interested, who's listening and wants to chime in, just drop us a line at modernmusicology1@gmail.com, or just leave a comment on our socials wherever you see our episode posted. All right, so now, how about we talk about SNL, shall we? So this season, since this year was kind of an extra big season because we had the 50th anniversary special and there were 5 music performances in that, I've decided to do a countdown this year of my top 15 instead of my top 10. And all 5 of the 50th anniversary episode music segments ranked pretty highly on my list. And I didn't want to leave out any of the performances from the regular season because of those. So we're just going to go with 15 instead of 10. Now, the way that I score these is in the regular season, each performer does 2 segments, one about halfway through the show and one toward the end. And generally, it's 1 song per segment. So I score each song on a really unscientific scale from 1 to 10, and then take a total of the 2. For the 50th, where each act did only 1 song, I scored it from 1 to 10 and then doubled it. So my criteria is basically, did I like the song? Was the performance good? Was the music live? And that's kind of a big one for me. Usually an act doesn't score very highly if they're singing to pre-recorded music. Usually if there's not, live performers on stage, then it gets knocked down considerably in my list. But there are exceptions to that, and I've got a couple of those coming up on my list here. So here we go. And let's just jump right on in to number 15. And that one is from the 50th anniversary episode. And actually, it was the segment that opened the show. This was Paul Simon and Sabrina Carpenter, and they sang Homeward Bound. Now, that song was originally performed by Paul Simon and George Harrison way back in season 2, in the 8th episode of season 2 on November 20, 1976. Paul was the host, and he was also the musical guest. And he's saying, this is the famous episode where he opens the show by coming out in a turkey costume and singing Still Crazy After All These Years. This was the Thanksgiving show. But he also, later in the show, also performs 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, Bridge Over Troubled Water, Something So Right. And then he and George also perform Here Comes the Sun, one of my favorite Beatles songs ever. And they both do Homeward Bound. So this song, opening the show with this, and, Paul is one of the staples of those early years of SNL, both as host and as musical guest. And so this was kind of a throwback to those early years of SNL. And I really thought it was great having him and Sabrina Carpenter perform together, because these are 2 artists from very, very different styles of music and very different generations. And it was kind of cool to see that that chasm being bridged, a bridge over troubled water. And I thought it was a lot of fun to see the 2 of them do this song. And Sabrina seemed to really appreciate the fact that she was on stage with a living legend. I thought it was really great. And it was a really nice way, unexpected way to open the 50th anniversary special, but it's a great way to open my list. So number 15, Paul Simon and Sabrina Carpenter with Homeward Bound. So coming in at number 14, this is from the April 13th episode hosted by John Hamm, and the musical guest was Lizzo. Now, this is one of those examples where I don't think the music was, well, at least mostly the music was not live. I don't think. But in her 2 segments, the first one, she did 2 songs. Now, one of them wasn't a full song. It was basically just used as an intro to that first segment. And it was Love in Real Life. And it's really done with Lizzo and her dancers, and she's accompanying herself on electric guitar. So in that case, yes, the music was live. But the second song she did in her first segment was Still Bad. And then in her second segment toward the end of the show, Don't Make Me Love You. And I'm pretty sure both of those were to a recorded track. Now, yes, that should knock her down the list a little bit farther, but both songs were so good. The songs are so much fun, and she just performed the hell out of them. So, I can't argue with that. So she comes in at number 14 in my overall list of like 25 or whatever it is performances of the year. And that's, that's still kind of low, but since we're doing a top 15, she makes the list. And Lizzo's always just so much fun. You can't go wrong with a Lizzo performance. So that's what we got. Now at number 13, we got another one coming from the 50th anniversary special, and this was Miley Cyrus and Brittany Howard, and they are doing Prince's Nothing Compares to You. And I thought that they were good. Both of them are such great singers, and Brittany is such a wonderful guitar player. And I thought that they put an interesting and kind of unique spin on that song. And overall, the performance was really good, and they were backed up by the house band, which at this thing was basically the Roots. And I thought they were just terrific. It was a good performance. I think the only reason that it goes up above Lizzo is because the music was live. Now at number 12, now December was a great run of episodes. The 3 shows that season or that month were really good. And the first one, December 7, was hosted by Paul McCartney, and the musical guest was Shaboozey. Now, Shaboozey is somebody that I was not very familiar with. I know the name, and I kind of know what it is that he does, but I hadn't heard either of the songs that he performed on the show. He did Good News in his first segment and Bar Song in his second segment, and I thought he was terrific. I really enjoyed both of his performances, and I really liked the songs a lot, and I thought he had such a great energy and played to the crowd really, really well. And I think I'm a fan. I love it when SNL introduces me to performers that I'm not familiar with. And, the best example of that was 3 or 4 years ago. I'd never really heard of Japanese Breakfast before, and she blew me away. And I was immediately a big fan of her. So thanks SNL for that. And I think thanks SNL also for introducing me to Shaboozey and giving me a real good taste of what Shaboozey does. And I really enjoyed him. Now, number 11 is once again from the 50th anniversary special. And this one is Adam Sandler. Now, okay, technically he's not a musical guest. He's a cast member. And, back when he was on the show, he always did a little segment, usually in Weekend Update, of him sitting at the update desk with his little acoustic guitar and playing his comedy songs, his schlocky kind of like, silly songs. And that's what he did here, but he did it on the main stage, not as part of Update. And he did a song called 50 Years, and it's a tribute to the history of SNL. And a lot of it was, it was silly, definitely. And it had a lot of like in jokes as far as like the guys who hold the cue cards and things like that. And it was really fun. But then toward the end of the song, it got really, really touching and did a lot of call outs to cast members throughout the entire history of the show. And some that you would never even expect to have heard a mention of, like Melanie Hutzel, but I thought it was really, really well done. And he's always a great performer and a good songwriter. And I thought this really fit the tone of that special so well. And I really enjoyed that. So that puts him at number 11. Yeah, technically not a musical performer or not a musical guest. So, I'm kind of sneaking him in there, but he did perform a full segment on an episode. So I count him. So our top 10 kicks off with the December 21 episode. And that was hosted by Martin Short. This was the Christmas episode, and the musical guest was Hozier. And that's not somebody that I've really been much of a big fan of, but his current single at that time, Too Sweet, is such a fantastic song. I absolutely love it. And I was really, really enjoying hearing him play it live on SNL. Now, in his second segment, this is the Christmas episode. And every year, the musical guest will do one of their own songs and then a Christmas song. And this year, Hozier did Too Sweet, like I said, in the first segment. And then toward the end of the show, did one of my least favorite Christmas songs ever. I just don't like it very much. And that's Fairy Tale of New York. But I got to say, his performance was so good that it actually maybe made me like that song a little bit. I really enjoyed it. I thought that he put a unique spin on it. And, I really enjoyed it. I think that Hozier just really turned in a solid performance in an overall really excellent episode. So Too Sweet and Fairy Tale of New York puts Hozier at number 10. So at number 9, this one kind of surprises me a little bit. This is Billie Eilish. She was on the Michael Keaton episode, which aired on October 19. And usually Billie ranks pretty highly in my list. The first time, I think it was the first time that she was on the show, she fucking blew me away, and she topped my list for that year. I thought that her performance was unbelievably good. And then I think the next year she was on again and ranked number like 2 or 3 or something on my list. I think she's really great, and I wasn't a fan until I saw her on SNL, and that completely changed my mind. So I'm surprised that Miss Eilish and her big brother Phineas are as far down the list as this, number 9. But they did 2 songs. The first one was Birds of a Feather, which is a great little song. It's a catchy song. It's a lot of fun. And then the second song was Wildflower. And I think what's happening here is that both of them were sort of a little more down tempo. They were a little more subdued performances than what we usually get from Billie on SNL. And they're both great tunes. I really enjoy both of them. Birds of a Feather particularly has sort of like a breezy Southern California kind of like almost like a 70s throwback kind of vibe to it that I really enjoy. And both songs were performed really, really well. I thought they were great, but I don't know. I just think that maybe it was a little bit lackluster, and that's not anything. This has just been a strong season for music on SNL, and there's a lot of stuff that happened later in the season that I liked more, and that's all it comes down to. I really did enjoy Billie a lot, but I think there were other things that were stronger. So, she's still in my top 10, but she's just not up at the top of the list like she usually is. And that brings me to number 8, which is an artist who's really kind of new on the scene. And I had only just discovered him maybe a few weeks before he was announced as coming onto the show. And that's a guy called Mk.Gee. And he was on November 9 in the episode that was hosted by Bill Burr. And Mk.Gee, man, this is a unique cat. And he did 2 songs, Rockman and Alessis, and interesting stuff. He's kind of a weird dude, and I really like the weird, but the performances, it was him and his band. And not only were the songs weird, but the staging was interesting because the stage is bathed in this really dark lighting. I remember the first song being very red, and he's for the most of the time backlit. So you're really seeing him mostly in shadow from what I recall. And it was just an unusual way to present yourself on national television for probably the first time. I don't know that he's done any big performances outside of SNL before that. So I just thought it was interesting. But also, the songs are they're not very catchy. They're not like big top 40 banger kind of songs. They're not like a big powerful rock song or a good dance song or anything like that. They're just weird. And I really appreciate that. It kind of made me think of SNL back in the 70s would just put all kinds of things on their show. It didn't have to be the Rolling Stones every week or Paul Simon or anything like that. They would put the Preservation Jazz Band, that kind of thing. And they had a performance from the cast of Pirates of Penzance one time. And they just did all sorts of things. And every week was something different and unexpected. And I kind of felt like that's what we got from Mk.Gee. Like he was just sort of like this left field kind of inclusion in this season. And I really, really appreciated that. And I really appreciated his performances. Both of his songs I'd heard already on the radio and was really excited about seeing him on the show. And he surprised me because the performance was kind of odd, but I really, really dig that. So I was really thrilled to see him, and I thought he was fantastic and the band was great. So that put him at the number 8 spot. Okay, so coming in at number 7, this is another one from the 50th anniversary special. And this was Lil Wayne and the Roots. I thought they were fantastic. Now, this was a little bit of a longer segment. Lil Wayne did a medley of 5 songs, And that included Uproar, Lollipop, 6 Foot, 7 Foot, Mrs. Officer, and a Millie. And I thought it was fantastic. I thought that Lil Wayne performed incredibly well. I thought the music was solid. But, you know, that really comes down to the Roots. They are such a great band, and they are so solid with each other and just great players. And I'm a bit of a rap fan, but I and I don't want to dismiss the DJ element of rap and sideline that in any way. But I think that a lot of times rap works best when it's with a live band, because I think that brings out something different in a performer. And I think Lil Wayne really rose to the occasion. And I think this was a fantastic segment. All of the songs that he did were great, and the Roots performed so incredibly well. And I thought it was honestly one of the highlights of the 50th anniversary special. And I have gone back and watched that segment quite a few times. So great job, Lil Wayne and Roots. I thought they were fantastic. Number 6. This is from the December 14 episode. So she was on 1 week before Shaboozey. No, she was on 1 week before Hozier and 1 week after Shaboozey. So this is Gracie Abrams, and this is the episode that was hosted by Chris Rock. And she's another one that's kind of like a newer artist on the scene, and one that I've started becoming aware of not too long before she was actually on the show. But somebody that I've really been liking a lot, and have heard a number of her songs on the radio, and have started to like sort of investigate her a little bit more. And I think she's really great. She did the 2 songs that she did on the show are That's So True and I Love You, I'm Sorry. And, you know, I think she's really, really great. She's sort of in that Taylor Swift world where she's this singer-songwriter who plays guitar. And I think she's just got so much potential in so many ways. And I'm really excited to see, you know, her sort of getting some national exposure like that. And, you know, I know that usually every performer that appears on SNL, at least their streaming numbers the next day skyrocket, because people see them sometimes maybe for the first time, or sometimes it may be, you know, a reminder of what a great artist, whoever this is, can be. And people go and listen to their music. And that's the benefit of performing on SNL.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek?
Never mind. Take 2. Cut.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek?
When Wayoon said...
We can leave that in when Wayoon said... Did he ever say that?
I remember that episode.
Keith, you get second.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek?
Blindfolded martial arts with glowy... Oops.
Find out on Earth Station Trek, a podcast about Star Trek.
How terrible is it?
So at number 5, this comes from January 25th, and this one was hosted, and the musical guest was Timothée Chalamet. And this is him coming off of his Bob Dylan biopic that he starred in, where he did all the music. He learned how to play guitar. He learned how to perform. He did a deep dive into the Bob Dylan catalog. And now he is one of the disciples. He is one of the major fans of Bob Dylan. And I think it really shows in these performances. And I say that because, first of all, he did 2 segments like always, but in his first segment, he did 2 songs, and then the third one in his later segment. But all 3 songs that he did are very unexpected choices. I mean, it would have been so easy for him to come out and do any of the songs that you would naturally expect to hear from a Bob Dylan tribute. And that would be, you know, Knocking on Heaven's Door, or Like a Rolling Stone, Blowing in the Wind, you know, those kind of songs. The Times They Are A-Changin'. He didn't do any of those kind of things. He picked 3 unexpected songs, and I think that worked to his advantage in a lot of ways. First of all, he's not trying to do a Bob Dylan imitation. He's Timothée Chalamet performing these songs, and I think that he really invests himself well in these songs, and I think he did a fantastic job. So the 3 that he did, Outlaw Blues and 3 Angels in his first segment, And then toward the end, he did Tomorrow is a Long Time. And these are three very different songs. And Three Angels, particularly, is a spoken word song. And I thought that this was a fantastic performance. Plus, he's doing hosting duties. So he's super busy throughout this whole episode. And I was really, really proud of him for doing such a great job. And I think he's just this massive star. And he's, got such huge potential for the rest of his career. And he's so young. He's got so far that he can go. And I really appreciate anybody as young as him going back to the foundational figures of rock and roll and really getting invested in them. And that's what he's done with Bob Dylan. And, yes, it was partly because he was hired to play this role in the movie. But I think that his devotion to Dylan is so genuine, and it just radiates from him when he's playing these songs. And I just think he was fantastic. So he came in at number 5 on my list. Now, here's the one that surprises me the most. At number 4, this is an artist that I don't think still that I like. And there are still songs of hers that I just do not like at all. And the fact that she comes in at number 4 just surprises the hell out of me. And that is Chapel Roan. She was on the November 2nd episode, which was hosted by John Mulaney. And the band was great. The staging was fantastic. The performances were really good. And I was already kind of liking the song Pink Pony Club. And I like a few of her other songs too. But Pink Pony Club is a fun song. And I think that they just performed the hell out of that song. It was so good. But then, and I didn't have any appreciation of this at the time, because I don't know enough about Chapel Roan's stuff to identify this, but she did a new song. She debuted a new song, and that was called The Giver. And what a bold thing to do, to come out when you've got this string of hits that have been all over the radio, and there are so many things that you could have done, and you come out and play a brand new song. I thought that was really cool. So I just thought that their performance was just slamming, and I really enjoyed it. And I've gone back and watched their segments I don't know how many times now, because I keep thinking, did I really like it as much as I think that I liked it? And yeah, I did. And I think I might be coming around on the Chapel Roan situation because of this. And this has happened before for me. And the person who's at the top of my list this year, I didn't really care for originally until I saw her hosting and performing on SNL, and she was amazing. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But Chapel Roan, I might be coming around to her a little bit. I think I might be buying into the hype a little bit. There's still, a song or two of hers that I just don't like at all. But yeah, maybe I'll come around to those too. But for right now, she was a strong enough performer on SNL that she comes in at number 4 on my list. And, like I said, I score each song individually and then total score for that. And so she got a 16.5. I have a possible 20 points, and she came in at 16.5. And I think that's, for an artist that I've never really liked, I think that's pretty impressive. Now, number 3, now we're up to the big ones. Number 3, this one is the 5th of my 5 ones from the 50th anniversary special. And if you saw the special, you know who's left. We've already covered Lil Wayne and Adam Sandler and Miley and Britney and Paul and Sabrina. So the only one that's left from the show. And that is the mighty Paul McCartney. He and his band are so good. And they did the entire Golden Slumbers suite, the end of that suite with Carry That Weight and the end and all that stuff. And they were so great. Now, yes, I know Paul's voice is a bit ragged, but come on, he's 82 years old and he's still out touring and performing at a really strong level. And I don't care that his voice doesn't sound like it used to. Nobody's does. No performer can sustain. except for, in a lot of cases, opera singers, because they are trained to take and care for their voice in a very different way. But rock and roll is such a hard thing to sing for as many decades as some of these people have been doing it. And I don't care that his voice doesn't sound the same as it used to. I think he is amazing. I will follow him anywhere he goes. And I just thought this was such a great performance. And this was toward the end of the show. This was an incredible way to sort of bring that 50th anniversary special, which was a 3-hour special, mind you. I thought this was such an incredible way to bring that sort of toward its end to really wrap the special up. And I thought that this was just incredible. This was an amazing performance, and his band is so strong that, man, I just don't even know what else to say about it. It was incredible. So Mr. McCartney, and this is Paul McCartney coming in at number 3. So who could possibly top that? Well, this might be controversial. I don't know. And I really did debate about whether I should swap these two or not. But my number 2 is Stevie Nicks. This was October 12th. This was the episode that was hosted, interestingly enough, hosted by Ariana Grande, who could easily have been host and musical guest. And I'm not sure why she didn't do that. I don't know if that was her choice. I'm sure it must have been. They must have given her the option to be the musical guest if she wanted to be, I mean, why wouldn't she? But she didn't. So it was Stevie Nicks. And this is Stevie performing her brand new song, the really, really excellent The Lighthouse. And this had come out maybe 2 weeks prior to the SNL performance. And it's such a great song, and it's so great to hear Stevie, who's had such a long career, to come out at this late period with this really, really strong song. And I thought that the performance of it was great. Now, we've recently got an announcement that she's working on a new album that's going to be kind of like her version of a Rumors, where she just lays it all out and just tells you what's going on. Now, of course, she's going to tell you what's going on. It's going to be a tell-all, but it's going to be in that Stevie Nicks lens, where she's uses lots of flowery language, and she doesn't necessarily name names. And she's, you're still going to have to kind of read into what she's talking about to really get the meaning of each song. But, the fact that she's at her age and she's still working on new music is great. And The Lighthouse was just a fantastic song. And it was such a strong statement from her. And then in her second segment, she goes back to her first album and does Edge of 17, which was, just fantastic. She and her band are so good that they just tore both of those songs up. So I was really, really impressed, and I really love it. She came in at a 18 for me. She ranked very, very highly in my my overall season. But there was one artist that ranked just slightly higher, who I scored a 19 on her 2 performances. And this is I'm not entirely sure that the music for her first song was live. I don't think it was, but the performance was so incredibly good. And then she comes in with her second song, and it was live. She had a band on stage, but the performance carries on throughout the hallways of the studio, all the pre-stage area before you come into the studio and then up onto the stage. She comes up onto the stage and she, joins her band, which is playing the song. And this was Lady Gaga. This was March 8th. She was the host and the musical guest, and she did this is when her new album had just come out, and she did the first single from the album, Abracadabra. And then in the second segment, she did what is my favorite song from that album, Killa. And both performances were unbelievable. They were so intense, and she is such an incredible performer and an incredible singer, and she had a really strong band with her. And I thought that she tore that studio up in a way that nobody else that season did. And she's the one that I was talking about a little bit earlier, where earlier in her career, I didn't really get her yet. I wasn't really on board. This is around Bad Romance. And I think I might have kind of liked the song Bad Romance, but generally speaking, I was not a Little Monster. You know, I was not a Gaga fan, but she hosted SNL and she completely and entirely won me over. And not from performing, but from her hosting. She was so great as an SNL host. And there were two skits that stood out for me. One where she's playing kind of like a Best Buy sort of employee, but she's, you know, doing humor that's very self-deprecating. And then at the end of the show, the last skit of the night, I believe it was the last skit of the night, she did a piece with Keenan, and she's playing an old, washed up future version of herself where she's living in this high-rise penthouse and she has no friends and nobody remembers who she is. And she like will break something in her apartment just so she can call the superintendent, who comes up and fixes it for her, and that she has someone to talk to. And it was so sweet and so heartbreaking and still funny. And I thought that she was just an incredible performance in that skit, in both of those skits. And I was like, oh my God, I love this person. So ever since then, I've been on the Gaga train. But this new album of hers is a banger, and it is so good. And I'm not usually a big fan of the overly processed, synthesized, you know, music where there's not a lot of, you know, acoustic live-ish instruments playing. But and I think there's only a live drummer on one song on that album, and that's Killa. And, you know, it's not typically my sort of thing, but she's such an incredibly good songwriter and such a great performer. And I thought that she definitely turned in the best performance of the season on SNL season 50. So that is my list. And I appreciate you listening to me ramble for half an hour. And I would really love to know what some of your highlights of season 50 are. You know, what were some of your favorite performances, some of your favorite bands, some of the favorite songs that you heard? Were there anybody that performed that you didn't know before you saw them on SNL and you became a fan, or you liked what they did? I would really love to hear from you. You can email us at modernmusicology1@gmail.com, or you can just leave a comment on our socials or wherever you listen to, or if you listen to our podcast on Spotify or iTunes or whatever, leave a comment there and we'll see it, or drop a comment on our socials when we put the episode out. So thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope that you enjoyed this. And please do let me know what you think of this and what you thought of SNL music this season. All right. Join us again in 2 weeks when we talk to author Mk.Gee, who has a new book out called All the Young Punks, The People's History of the Clash. And spoiler alert, as this episode's gone out, we've already recorded that interview and it turned out really well. I think you're going to really enjoy it. If you're a punk fan, if you're a fan of the Clash, most definitely check this out. You're going to really enjoy it. So join us for that in 2 weeks. Everybody take care, have a great week, and keep rocking on.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.